Welcome to Season 4 of the Mindset Mantra podcast, brought to you by Mariposa Sources, your source for personal growth, business strategies, and the power of transformation. I'm your host, Vanessa Ciliazar, and I'm thrilled to have you with us on this journey. In this season, we're diving deep into the mindsets that drive success, explore stories of personal transformation, and uncover strategies to unlock your full potential. Each episode is designed to empower you with insights and practical tools to navigate life's challenges and opportunities. But before we jump into today's inspiring episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode filled with actionable advice. So on my episode today, I have Cory Martin. Cory helps partners and families of people in addiction learn how to overcome codependency and dysfunction so they can encourage the recovery process at home. Welcome, Cory.
Hi, welcome me. Good to be with you again.
Yes. So tell the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, tell you. I think you know. So, hi, I'm Cory, and I help partners and loved ones of people who struggle with addiction. That may sound weird to some people who don't have a lot of experience in that, or maybe they've never had a loved one who's in active addiction. You may be thinking, oh, well, but doesn't the person who's struggling, aren't they the ones that need help? Why do you need to help the family? And the real reason that I do what I do is that research actually suggests that the family members, when the family members and loved ones of someone in addiction learn the skills, the relationship skills, the perspective based in research and psychology to be able to help that person who's struggling, their recovery rates increase. It makes it easier for them to find the help that they need. It makes it easier for them to decide to get help at home or to go get treatment or any and all of the above. All of those outcomes start to have a better chance at finding footing when the family or the partner gets help first. So that's what I do. I coach primarily from experience, but I am just a learner. My brain is just like an information sponge. So when I was in a relationship with someone who was struggling with alcohol, I wanted to figure out what am I supposed to be doing here? And I spent a long time in the deep and dysfunctional codependency that made the problem worse, that just ramped it up, that just increased the risk-taking behaviors on the part of my loved one, that increased the potential harm that he could have experienced and that he did end up experiencing because my influence in his life was so negative. I didn't realize it at the time. I thought that I was helping. I thought that I was the one that was aware of the problem. Now, in hindsight, I can still see that of many people in his life, I was more aware that the alcohol was a problem. A lot of people maybe weren't aware that that was an issue and weren't aware that he needed help. So in one respect, I did know that he needed help, but I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, which was that the way that I was helping was harmful. I say helping in quotes. The way I was helping was really detrimental. And I think that a lot of people, not just people with loved ones in addiction, but even if you have a loved one who struggles with mental illness, struggles with a learning disability, an invisible illness, chronic illness, anything like that, you may be helping in quotes in a way that can actually make their problem a lot harder for them to overcome. And so that's what I do. And that's what I help people learn how to do.
So how did you get out of that mindset? Because I'm sure that was really difficult to realize that you were enabling.
So I really got out of it because so many people told me that I was the problem. That's what did it. Crickets, sarcasm, jokes. That didn't do it. Other people telling me that I was the problem really didn't snap me out of it in any way. What actually got me to start making those changes was my own interest in figuring out what might work. So it wasn't when the first person said, hey, you're making it worse. Hey, you got to stop doing this. That wasn't the thing that shifted me out of that. It really was when I decided, hey, this is a problem that I need to figure out how to solve. Now, in my mind, the problem I was solving was, getting him to get help. But in my process of wanting to learn how to get him help, I happened upon enough experts, enough coaches, enough even like spiritual mentors and YouTube channels and books and things like that, that presented me with a totally different philosophy to what I had learned my entire life. And what I had learned my entire life was that when people need help, you do everything you possibly can to help them in whatever way possible. And you sacrifice everything about yourself until they're better. And then that's good. And you're dead, but it's good and it's fine. Right. And so it was really my stubbornness really stubborned me out of that codependent dynamic to a point that I started getting help for myself. I started going to therapy and getting help and getting feedback from someone on that side of things. I started signing up for coaching and getting help from people who were on a totally different wavelength than I was, that maybe people who were where I wanted to be, but I wasn't there yet. So that was really what started it for me. And it's interesting because I'll see people talking about that you don't want to use that kind of language with people. People will say, you don't want to use the word addict when you're talking with loved ones. You don't want them to think it's okay to use that language. But the thing is, if you don't speak to someone where they are, they're not going to hear you. If you're speaking to someone levels above where they need to, where they currently are, they're not going to get there. It's going to sound totally foreign. They're going to think like, oh, you're just coddling them. I don't want to hear that. But if someone can say, hey, like one of my old taglines, hey, I'm Cory and I love an addict. Wait, what? You love them? Because I hate them. Okay, at least we're on a playing field, right? At least we are speaking the same language right now. And if I can get you speaking the same language with me, then I can probably help you. And that was really what it took for me was people who were speaking my language, but still giving me new information.
Yeah, that's very relatable. After dealing with all of that, how were you able to establish financial and personal independence after that trauma and conflict?
So I will say I am oddly one of the lucky ones. I think that most people have an uphill battle in getting out of a financially entangled situation. I definitely chalk a lot of my own experience up to being in the right place at the right time. Right. Because I know I wouldn't be where I am right now if it wasn't for COVID. If the pandemic didn't happen, I would not have had that moment of pause. I wouldn't have had the time, the gap in what I was doing at the time to regroup and reconsider and look at different options. And I may not have had the focused patience to dedicate myself single-mindedly to a new career path, a new mission, and a new endeavor that is now financially supporting me. Prior to that, I was 100% gig worker. I was traveling and doing comedy. I was driving for Uber. I was doing random gigs around LA, and I didn't have a stable income. I had an income, but we were mostly being supported by his income. I was not fully self-sustaining. But with the pandemic, it bought me some time. And it gave me sort of a little bit of breathing room. And I also had the perfect storm of beginning of pandemic. Not only was I already at a place where I was maintaining boundaries in my relationship and I was comfortable with not getting enmeshed and entangled with what was going on with him. I was no longer taking his addiction personally. I was no longer getting upset when, things would go a certain way in his life. I wasn't right there with him reacting to every single thing. So he was on his trajectory and going through his own thing, and I was able to focus on my own stuff. And as I was focusing on my own stuff and he's going through all of his own trials, he ended up hitting what would be considered something like a rock bottom. And I count him and myself both as very lucky due to the pandemic, because I don't think that he would have gone to rehab. I don't think he would have started in therapy. I don't think he would have started getting help if it wasn't for the time and the focus that the pandemic provided. Now, most people, I say I'm one of the lucky ones, most people didn't have that perfect storm. We had a perfect storm because I had already done all of this healing work leading up to the pandemic. So he was in lockdown with someone with healthy boundaries. Most people in addiction were in lockdown with someone codependent, and they're spiraling down, right? And they're falling apart. I really feel like that moment in history really lent itself to my own ability to regroup and establish. But the good news about that, I'm sure people might be listening and thinking, well, shit, I don't want another pandemic to happen so that I can find financial peace or something. But the good news about that is I can say now in hindsight, the reason that was helpful was that I did decide in that moment that the most important thing to focus on was my long-term stability and not my short-term survival. Short-term survival was where everybody was in that moment. So I didn't have to worry about short-term survival. We all had these sort of like rituals that we had adopted, right? Where we were all, okay, we're locked down, we're inside. You go to the grocery store once a week and you mask up and you do all, and this is how we stay okay. Okay, cool. That's handled for me now. I don't have to be scrambling for money. I don't have to be panicking over the budget. If something doesn't get paid this month, but I get work done that can propel me forward. It was way easier to make that gamble in the pandemic than it is for people now. But I can still say with certainty that when you are in a financially entangled place and you want to start peeling yourself out of it, you are going to have to take some measure of risk. Now you can mitigate the risk, but there's still going to be something that feels like a massive risk to you. Whether that is, all right, I decide that in order to have enough money for a hotel for an entire month, I'm not paying this bill. I'm going to let my credit get hit so that I can go be safe, right? I'm going to let my car get repoed so that I can be in a different location, right? Whatever. And these are just examples of the kinds of decisions that people end up having to make and the kinds of decisions that we avoid making to maintain our short-term, immediate comfort that tends not to be very comfortable, right? Right now, if I do, well, I can't do that because if I do that, then this thing's going to happen. And if this thing happens, then it'll feel icky for 2 months. Cool. And you'll stay trapped for 2 more years. What are we trading? So we really do have to start thinking about what is the trade-off if you are trying to establish separation, if you're trying to establish financial independence while remaining in the relationship, because sometimes the financial entanglement can be a threat to the relationship while they're still struggling. You've got to decide, what things am I willing to sacrifice? What is my highest value? What is my main principle that I need to be preserving? What's the most important thing here? And so that is something we work on a lot inside of my programs is getting to that first principle and deciding, are we taking care of the most important thing?
Yeah, that reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, we talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back, you mentioned focused patience. How did you start developing focused patience?
How did I start developing? Road trips, honestly. How did I actually start developing that? I'll say the way I actually started developing that was through comedy. So in order to write a script, or in order to make it through an improv game at all, make it through a 5 minutes on a stand-up like open mic stage, in order to make it through those little moments, you don't start with that moment. You really start with the failure. You start with the failure before you step on the stage, before you sit down with the pen. You've got all the bad ideas. You've got all the things that aren't going to work. And that's what's really piled up behind you. So that focused patience, the more important thing to me is the initial acceptance of failure, accepting that the first few things you're going to do are going to suck. The first few steps to this process will be painful, will be embarrassing, will kick up all kinds of shame in you, are going to be a challenge to your sense of self, are going to make you feel, they might make you feel bad about yourself. They might make you want to throw the pen across the room and say, I'm not good at this. I'm never writing a joke again. But if you don't decide in that moment that I'm okay with being bad at this first, you can't get to that state of just patience in general, being patient with yourself and your process. And from being patient with yourself and your process, and then deciding you know what matters most and you're willing to sit down and give that all of your attention, that's where you get to that focused patience. That is actually where you can make changes.
Yes, that That was beautiful. I am practicing focused patience myself. I think we
We all
all
are all the time. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and also with the financial independence, it's like, okay, I can't stress out that I can't pay these bills because me stressing out isn't going to make money appear.
Mhm.
I have to focus and be patient and
Mhm.
do the things that will
Mhm.
bring the money.
Right. I actually had, this is perfect timing because I had a group session this morning where we talked about exactly this. So inside of my like private coaching program, I've got a bunch of different group cohorts that are all customized based on what these different groups of women, it's mostly women. I only have one man in the program right now. So what all these different groups of women are really going through. And our Wednesday morning group is our boss babes. So it's all female entrepreneurs who are in relationships with men who are struggling with addiction. And it's a very specific niche. and in that group, we were talking about how to shift out of that financial panic, because the financial panic, well, it's real and you don't want to reach a state of bankruptcy by like, sticking your head in the sand and ignoring a financial problem. You also don't want to be so fixated, so focused on the absence of money that you forget to do the things that will improve that state. So one of my clients was struggling because obviously you have a loved one in addiction. They're probably hemorrhaging money. They're probably spending money that they don't need to be spending. It's really hard to maintain a budget. And we forget that a lot of the time, the things that we enjoy doing the most can be revenue generating activities. Oftentimes, the thing you're best at is also a really solid career path for you. But when you have a loved one in addiction, you think, well, I just have to keep this like shitty job that pays the bills as long as I can to keep treading water, to keep my head above water. I've got to just keep doing this $25 an hour job, or this worst case $15 an hour job. I just got to keep showing up 40 hours a week, depleting myself and draining myself so that I can pay the bills, so that the money they make from their job can get spent on their addiction. And there's almost nothing that is more enabling to someone in addiction than you depriving yourself of being you to protect the financial stability of that person who's struggling. I've got to make sure that I do everything that sucks for me so that I can pay all the bills so that they can spend money on their thing. We really do in those moments, whether, and this applies to everyone, whether you have a partner who's doing great in all areas, but maybe they work too much. Maybe they spend too much time out at the bar. Maybe they spend too much time playing video games, whatever it is. If you feel like you have to keep this thing going that hurts you, that feels like shit and makes your life miserable in order to allow them to do whatever they're doing, I hate to break it to you, that's codependency no matter how you spin it. And if we can decide the thing that I'm doing that sucks, that I hate, is bad enough for me that it's not worth these bills getting paid, would I be happier? The question I always say, ask yourself this about your relationship, about yourself. Compare this job to all other options. Would I be happier with living under a bridge? Would I rather go sit in a park for 12 hours a day than go to this job? If the answer is yes, then you've got some serious things to consider. Now, this is not a call to homelessness. And Vanessa, you know this more than anybody, especially living in Southern California. We do not need more of that. But if the answer is I would actually rather be homeless than work this job, I bet you we can find something in the middle, right? And I think I accidentally just turned this into a plug for you. I bet we can find something in the middle, because there are people, and I do this for my clients as well. It's not how I niche, but there are people, there are coaches out there, there are brains out there that can help you find what you're really passionate about, what you're really good at, and how who you are can be a life fulfilling and purpose driven career for you. Your career doesn't need to be something punishing. You don't have to have this mindset around labor where, oh, all revenue generating behavior is labor and is exploitative. It's not. Some of it is fun and it's awesome. And you'd rather be doing that than anything else in the world. And did you know that someone will pay you to do it? Most of us don't realize that.
Exactly. Like, I had my best friend come over to declutter my house. She loves doing that.
Yes.
And so I made a company for her.
Yeah. You could do this, this thing you like, you can just do that. Yeah. The only mindset reframe anyone needs is, hey, the thing you like, you can do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hired someone who was working, she was gig working through Instacart full time, breaking her back, breaking her body. And she's one of our volunteers at our nonprofit arts space that we have here in Kansas City. And she's an awesome volunteer. She's getting paid for one of her tasks, but then for other events, she also does volunteer work. And she makes money in like 3 different ways for that company, but it's not consistent enough to be her primary income. And in January, she said, hey, I think I'm going to have to quit doing all of this stuff because I need to take more hours at Instacart. And I was like, wait a second. Do you like doing Instacart more than this? And she said, no. And I said, what do you like doing? And she said, well, I really like this. I like all the planning. I like doing all this planning. I like doing all the event coordinating. I like organizing. I like spreadsheets. And I said, well, I need a personal assistant. So why don't you just not work Instacart and I'll pay you for 30 hours a week. And for the past few months, that has been for the past almost year now. She's been my lifesaver. And Vanessa, this as my former PA/VA, people like me need people like that. But oftentimes you don't realize that there's a perfect match for you out there that wants to pay you for being you. Whether it's a client or an employer, there's someone out there that needs what you do.
Yeah, I love that. I love that she's able to continue doing her purpose, her why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Staying in the reason that we're alive. I'm going to tangent because I was listening to a Dr. K episode. I don't know if you've seen his channel, The Healthy Gamer. So he's struggled with video game addiction, and he's a former monk and psychiatrist or something. It's like a million different things that he's done in his life, and he's got all this experience. He's very fascinating to listen to. But he was talking about someone had written in and said that what they like doing is like antithetical to modern living, that the things that they really like doing in their life were all the things that they could do on their day off. Like they like traveling and spending time with friends, and they like throwing themselves into crafts and doing fun things. And it was amazing to me to listen to this person talk. It's when you catch someone in that contemplation stage of change where they're like, oh, I'm aware that there's a problem. I'm finally aware that there's something I can fix, but I think I might just be stuck here. And that's where so many of us end up, is we get stuck believing that the things we like aren't valuable. The reason we think they're not valuable is because the things we like, we treat as neutral. We treat the things that we like as the normal thing because that's what our brain's always on. And we don't realize that there are people out there who are fascinated by that because their brain doesn't work that way at all. It's not neutral or normal except to you.
And when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work.
Right. You're allowed to do that. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
So you've been talking about being a business muse.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've talked about that on here before, but I want to hear more about that because that's not a job. How dare you? That wasn't in the career day at all. Nobody told you could be a business muse. What did you do? How'd you come up with that?
So I came up with being a business muse of listening to other entrepreneurs and what they wanted to do. And a lot of my clients had the end goal in mind, and it was a vague picture. So then I come in and I develop it to be a reality and exceed the expectations, or as simple of recognizing your passion, your why, and creating
structure, right? Like I don't mean to speak for you, but for those of you who don't know, Vanessa was the brain that organized the structure behind the Recovery Revolution, which is my company, which is now scaled to 6 figures a year. And we're holding that. And that is on the structure that was established by Vanessa that we've expanded on since then, that we've been able to keep going. But having somebody in your life that can say, hey, all these ideas you have are like doable. You can do all these things. And here's the shape that it can take. Here's how you fit all these pieces together. If you need to splat it all on a table, hey, here's my 87 different things about me, and find you a Vanessa. Now, if you're listening to this, there's one. She is the one, right? But find you a Vanessa, find you somebody who can just help you put that into a structure, because that's probably all you need. I don't know. Do you know the book Rocket Fuel?
It's in my Amazon cart. Yes.
Nice. Okay. Because you are such the like the integrator, or what I've also heard people refer to it as like an intrapreneur, which is someone who partners with entrepreneurs to bring their vision to life. And that's really like you have that ability to see like, okay, I see the vision, and then here's the vision of what the vision has to become, and then here's all the pieces, and also I made it for you. Here you go.
And it's scalable.
Yeah.
If you stay on the same systems.
Yeah.
Not calling anybody out.
Look, we're moving to Go High Level finally, and I feel really good about it. I bounce back and forth between systems like crazy, and you are right. It probably would have scaled faster if I had not done that. But I was also trying to just make it sustainable for me to not hate it. So I will say that's another thing. I think that a lot of the time we will try to fit ourselves into structures and systems that just don't appeal to us. We'll see like, oh, someone says this is good. And before figuring out if it's good, and this is something that I've only learned in the past year, before figuring out firsthand for yourself, does this actually feel good to you when you engage with this system? Right? Because like, if I had been where I am now 2-3 years ago, would I have ever messed around with Samcart? Probably not. Would I have bounced from, I probably wouldn't have bounced from Kajabi to Samcart to Wix, back to Kajabi, now to Go High Level. I probably would have been fine starting on Kajabi, staying on Kajabi, building out a Wix site. And now that I have the opportunity to move to Go High Level, to have a more robust CRM doing that. But instead I was like, this feels icky. Like something about this feels icky. So I'm going to try this other thing. Well, now something about that feels icky. So I'm going to try this other thing, instead of just sitting in something and saying, okay, the stuff that feels bad, maybe that's a hire. Maybe that's someone I need to hire and not something I need to bail on. And I think that having somebody like, if you're going to take that step into entrepreneurship, having somebody that can not just hold your hand, but like pick up those pieces that you can't hold is really important, because you can't do all of it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do all of it. It would be crazy if you could do all of it.
And the reason why I have my split die is because I understand that there's duality.
Mm-hmm.
So I can be logistical, or I can be inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
And I love asking the right questions: who, what, when, where, how, and why.
Mm-hmm.
And if you apply those questions to any situation, you'll have more knowledge to make better decisions.
Mm-hmm. You said yesterday was your birthday?
Yes. Yeah.
You don't want to have that conversation?
Sure, we can have that conversation.
I was just thinking, because you're a Libra, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Balance.
That's the balance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you can have some of this, you can have some of this. Oh, you got too much of that now. Yeah, let's fix that. Let's see both sides of it. Yeah. Honestly, that is, I'd say mindset wise, that was really the thing that I feel like is just a natural part of me that really helped me to shift out of my own kind of like codependent spiral. Something that I think really helped me get out of my codependent spiral is that ability to see balance and to look for balance, because I think that it's so appealing and it's so normal for us to want to find that extreme, that dramatic aspect where it's like, oh, this person's bad, this person's screwing up, oh, did you hear about so and so? That's really appealing to us. We want to go there. But if you can commit yourself to looking at the other side, it's easier, I think, to start making that shift. Now, I do think that I had some natural boosts in that direction, that I know that even when I was struggling with codependency, I was still seeing different perspectives to a degree that I don't see in everyone that for example, like everyone in my Facebook groups or everyone that follows me, a lot of people have a hard time with ever seeing the other side of things. So to that effect, I don't want to be unrealistic and say that everybody can do this. I actually want to say, whoever's listening to this, you're probably one of the people who can do this because you're looking for this kind of help. You are looking to see things differently. And it's important to know that that is something in you that is looking for this kind of answer, that is looking for a better way to think, a better way to see things. If you're looking for that, that is a good little nugget of evidence that you're on a right track for you.
That was an amazing final thought. Is there anything else that you would like to add for the listeners?
Honestly, I am just going to add this because I know how common this problem is. The likelihood that someone listening loves somebody in addiction is something like 50%. It's crazy high. It's like 1 in 2 people have been either in a relationship or have loved someone in their immediate family circle who struggles with addiction. So if that's something that has hit you, that has affected you, and you need help and you need support for it, you can probably, I would assume you can find my information after Vanessa releases this podcast. You can follow me at The Recovery Revolution. You can find my information at therecoveryrevolution.com, spelled exactly the way it's spelled. So reach out, get help, get connected, and keep going.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Mindset Mantra podcast. We hope you found today's insights valuable and inspiring. If you have any questions, comments, or would like personalized advice, we would love to hear from you. Simply drop a review or leave your questions in the comments section. We'll be selecting some of your comments for a shout out and free advice in our next episode. Remember, the journey to transformation begins with the right mindset. So keep tuning in, keep growing, and keep believing in yourself. You've got this. And as always, this is Vanessa signing off. Until next time, stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep living your best life.